Hey, it's Em here with another super random episode, and I apologize because I realized that I am super late for this super random episode. I was like, in my brain, I was like, I gotta get this video uploaded before it's late. But it turns out that not only am I late with this video upload, but it's also been an additional week of me being late. Does that make sense? So I don't know what happened with the time. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's because of this renovation project I'm working on or extreme lack of sleep. I don't know what's going on, but I am here now, and I was like, let me at least post something. And then my renovation project's almost over, so I not only will I be able to record properly, but actually I'm going to give myself a little setup at home specifically for recording videos, though I do like to record on the go. And quick question for you: what do you think about these walk and talk videos versus being at home? Like, I really am, a lot of my thinking, healing, processing, a lot of it takes place, well, all the time, but especially outdoors. So that's kind of what I do. But I'm just curious as to, like, you've probably have seen or can notice on my channel that, like, some videos indoors, some videos outdoors, but I lately have been really trying to emphasize just this beautiful environment. This is like my favorite place to walk. I feel like this park is completely magical. If like a fairy flew out randomly, wouldn't even be shocked. Okay, so for this random episode, I wanted to talk about budgeting, because for me, as someone who graduated with a lot of student debt, let me adjust this camera, as someone who graduated with a lot of student debt, and still wanting to be able to travel and still wanting to do different things, budgeting is huge for me. And really that whole experience really made me think carefully about spending and whether I was consciously spending or not. And I have touched on this in more detail on another platform, but I wanted to make sure to talk about it on this platform as well. Because I feel like talking about budgeting is, I feel like it's just such an important topic. And I know for me, it wasn't something it wasn't formally discussed that often. And, but it's essential. And I think especially like when it comes to like student loan debt, to me, like every dollar counts. I still would recommend, for anyone who's thinking about going to college, I still recommend like considering, low cost options or finding ways to not go into any kind of debt, because though it's, at the time, we're sold that dream, it's still the reality of dealing with the student loans and how much they set back future stuff, future savings. I know people who aren't starting families because of their debt, things like that. Like, it really sets things back, and more so than you can tell right then. But for me, budgeting really was, to me, empowering. To me, I say this a lot on this channel, for me, planning is empowering. And so anytime like I can sit down and put to pen and paper, or in many cases writing it, or honestly eventually it got to the point where just in my mind I know exactly what I'm doing with my paycheck when I get it. And I think a big thing for me is understanding, the number one thing is to understand exactly what are my spending priorities just naturally. So like, in other words, if I wasn't budget conscious, where is it that a lot of my money is being poured into? And so for me, food is actually food and travel. Those are my biggest things. And so if I'm gonna spend a lot of money on accident, that's where it's gonna go. So I have to think a lot more carefully about that. And those are like my weak points. So once I do that, then I looked at opportunities for savings. So for me, that actually meant everything from like, of course, like finding like a cheaper version of the food I like. Like, I like chips a lot. I like snack foods and things like that. So finding cheaper options. Now, honestly, just by starting to shop at Aldi. This is not a plug. This is just, I just love that store so much. But like, I just changed the grocery store basically that I shopped at, and that already started to change so much for me in terms of my budget. And it saved, when I tell you that changing that immediately probably saved like $100+ each month. You know, spending less money each month on groceries, like instantly, just by changing the grocery store. That was very important. And I didn't need to have like a special, like those cards that they have. Like, I know like some of the grocery stores, you know, they'll have like a customer rewards card and stuff like that. Wasn't necessary for this store, so it's perfect. So I had to, so that already changed some things for me. When it comes to restaurants, what I started to do was, so like I said, I like to travel. And to me, like, that was something I just had to find a way to work in the budget. So when it came to travel, huge priorities for me was, I wanted to make sure, in order to afford traveling, like, I just had to, I just had to make sure that I was always being very, very, very conscious about, you know, how much money I'm spending on a ticket. And then always thinking about because buying the ticket, even buying like a hostel, which was another big way I saved money. Another thing that I had to do was make sure I had a good understanding of travel once I hit the ground. So a lot of times for some of my more recent trips, I already had all like major transportation booked. So like, as in like landing in France, like I already knew what train I was getting on when I hit the ground. Like I read up on the public transportation system and everything to make sure that that was all accounted for in my budget. Now, don't get me wrong. Some things can go very, very wrong and have gone very wrong. But by at least having this stuff written out, by at least doing the best I could, I knew I did the best I could in order to have my budget together for the trip, because there's just a lot of those little things. And then I also kept in mind how much I could spend per day and still be within budget, because it's easy to go crazy on vacation, but I tried to just think about what is it that what really matters to me on this trip? What's the most important thing? To me, interacting with people. But being in a hostel already took care of that, because if I'm in a hostel, I'm naturally going to be around people, and I'm going to be more likely to interact than I would in a very expensive restaurant. That's just the reality of it. So that already helped me a lot. So that was a big thing. So I talked about those things. So those were huge. And also not being afraid to drive a little further to go to certain like airports and things. So for example, like the airport near me is more expensive because it's not a popular airport. But if I have to drive, I kid you not, if I have to drive 5, 6, 7 hours to get to an airport that's going to save me time and money. Yes, time in some cases. Like, it literally was cheaper for me to, it was cheaper and faster for me to drive 7 hours than to pay for that extra trip to the popular airport, or whatever came with whatever layover stops they had set up. It was easier for me, or cheaper and faster for me, to just drive there and do that. Like, I kid you not. And like, that's not always the case, but sometimes it was. And like, I think just being open to that can already save me. So that way I knew I wasn't going to spend too much on flights. And I was not. I also traveled with minimal things. So like, when I kid you not, I traveled with for like, even if it was a 10-day trip, one book bag, everything's in there. It is what it is, and I can make it work. I'm not very, as you can see, I'm not a very fancy person, so I'm not really dressed like, I know I'm not going to be dressed in like with all these fancy outfits and stuff like that. Like, not happening. It's just not me. I mean, to each their own. It's not me. So like, for me, yeah, we're having one book bag full of stuff. That's fine. So it saved on like checked baggage. It saved on a lot of stuff like that for yeah, for my 10-day trips. So those are things. But the big thing with that is like when I booked for trips, something big that I did was I made sure to use my credit card that had travel reward points. So I had a credit card that didn't cost, I don't think it had any, did it have any annual fees? I don't have this card anymore, not right now. But I didn't have any annual fees as far as I remember, and it had like really good cashback bonus for it. Like, so I like to look for something that gives like 4 or 5%, something around that cashback bonus for travel expenses. I never use my credit card for more than what I have set aside for the trip. So in other words, when that statement comes in, I can pay that off right away because that's already been set aside for that trip. So that's very important. That was very important to me. This hasn't steered me wrong. This plan hasn't steered me wrong yet. So yeah, I always have that in mind. So I don't go into any debt for something that is not 100% necessary. And I'd argue that even the schooling that I went to debt for was not necessary at all, but I did it, and I'm working to, again, just spread awareness when I can about just like, if one can avoid debt, please consider your options, because I just don't want to see anybody have to set back any aspect of their lives because of debt, especially when you have things you really want to do. Again, like, I think it's, yeah, that's a whole other topic. Please feel free to check out the college debt video where I talk a little bit about this. Yeah, so anyway, so my point in talking about the credit card, the cashback rewards, is that I use the rewards points to get restaurant gift cards, or use it to spend money, because that's free money. Because like, I was going to spend that money on travel anyway if I had bought like in cash, for example, but this way I get cash back. And so that really leads to like free gift cards. And so for me, it's really cool, because then like, it's like, even for example, I think this week, like me and my bestie, we're going out to eat, because we're going out to eat with the cashback bonus from the credit card. And so for me, that is a big hack. And I don't like to just go out to eat just to, like, I need to like make sure that if we're going out, I do want to make sure to celebrate, and I don't want to just like not celebrate things. But sometimes we have to be a little creative depending on where we're at with the budget. Like this month, we are at max because of the renovation project. Like, we are done. Like, no more spending on anything. So to have that cashback rewards was very, very important and very helpful. Oh, I just ripped my hair really good. Oof. Having those points and having that option has been very helpful for times like this when we are like at max for spending. So to me, like I said, being a conscious spender in that way is very important. There are a lot of other ways that, I always just try to have a number in mind. I definitely don't need to have but I think also just the kind of person I'm like, I don't need like the fanciest thing or the latest thing per se. I'm gonna drive my car until it can no longer drive. I just like to, but I do really like to focus on what will truly make me happy. And honestly, sometimes if the spending would be worth it, then I'll do what I need to do, but just not going into any debt or disrupting other parts of the budget as best as possible. So that's kind of my budgeting philosophy. I do believe that like every dollar can count. Every dollar counts. Like sometimes like it's so important to just be able to be aware. And I know it can be very easy to not be aware, because I think we're set up in such a strong consumerist society, and it's just like we're so well trained just be like, oh my gosh, I must have this, and okay, like, and I don't think we have necessarily, like, it's not saying that, like, for me, it's not like I'm deprived of everything that makes me happy. Like, no, but the reality is, can I live without that thing? Can I live without that thing and still be happy? Yes, 100% Yes. And so sometimes, like a big thing, and I think this is number 4, is not being afraid to walk away from it. So like if I'm like, I really want this thing, it's so nice, and like I saw this, you may have seen like one of my recent videos where I was like, oh, I saw this piece of art that I really liked, and technically it was within budget, but I walked away before. I was like, let me think about this. I walked away, I thought about it, didn't want to junk up the house, I didn't want too much stuff in there and I was fine. I walked away, didn't think about it much beyond that. There's no regret, and what do you know, I still feel happy. I'm still good, I'm still okay. So yeah, also I just don't like having that many things like crowding well, currently our place, like I just, it feels overwhelming for me, and it makes my naturally chaotic brain feel even more chaotic, which is not healthy. So yes, but I would like to know, first of all, what do you think of my little budget thoughts? And I want to know, what are some of yours? Like, what are some things, like some rules that you have for yourself, things like that, to really kind of keep yourself on track with budget? I would love to know what your philosophy is. I feel like I'm missing on some things from my own rules, but I was trying to remember this while walking early in the morning. So the chances of me remembering all of this was very slim in the first place. So, you know, so if I think of more, I will also note those. But I would love to hear what you have to say about that. But thank you for joining me on these super random episodes, walking and talking. Yeah, but I will be back. My goodness gracious, I'll be back. I don't know what happened again. I don't know what happened with my timing for this video, but yes, I'll be back soon with another random episode. So please, in the meantime, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll talk with you then. Bye for now.